Welcome back to Weems Motor Co. It's time to get this old girl some new shoes. Stick around. Alright, so if you've been following along with us on the rebuild of this 1950 Triumph that we have titled The Judge, because that was the name of the person who built the bike, we are at the point where we got the gearbox in, and now it's time to get these old dry rotted tires off of here and throw some new shoes on the old girl. The plan is to have this motorcycle riding and running and having a blast at the Georgia Grundle Run. We're getting close to it. We only have just a couple weeks left. Speaking of just a couple weeks left, we only have a couple weeks left in our Patreon member sign up promo that we're doing. Every person that heads over to our Patreon and signs up will receive a free sticker pack in the mail. And if you're not that kind of person that wants to support us through Patreon and get that 20% off of your orders and all the behind scenes and see all these videos before anybody else, you can head over to weemsmotorco.com, buy some merch, hats, t-shirts, stickers, shop rags, Triumph parts, all kinds of cool stuff. You place that order and we are going to throw that sticker pack in there for you also. Well, it's time to get these wheels off of this frame, get them washed up a little bit, and then we're going to take them over to our friends over at the Ride Factory in Ybor and have them mount the tires up. Let's check out these tires. Alright, on the back of this 1950 Triumph, we have a Dunlop Gold Seal K70 with a 3.5 inch wide by 19 tire. What's cool is we were able to source the same exact tire, just a brand new version of it, that we can put on the back of this old bike. Now this wheel, we talked about it earlier, this is a shouldered Ankront aluminum rim. And normally I would change my tone tires, use tire spoons, and do it the old school method like you've seen me do on Jack's bike. But these aluminum rims are pretty valuable, and I don't want to nick or mar or scratch these things up. Yeah, it's got a lot of dirt and grime on there, but I figured best to take it over to the Ride Factory. Those guys always hook me up, let me use that tire machine and get me mounted up and get me on my way a lot faster. So that's what we're going to do, pull this off and check it out. But there's some special stuff about this rear hub that we're going to get to in a little bit to talk about on these old vintage rigid Triumphs. Let's check out that front tire. Alright, so up front we are rocking a 3x19 Dunlop rib tire, and kind of surprised by that because that was kind of a rare tire even in its day. They don't make that tire anymore, but we were able to source a 3x19 ribbed Avon tire, which was probably what most people were running back in the day. So we're going to get that crusty old tire off of there, get the rim all cleaned up, wash both of these rims, and bring them over to the Ride Factory, get them mounted up so we can get this bike running and riding for the Georgia Grundle Run. Let's do it. This being a good reason why you want to go through and check everything before you just take a bike out on the road. Well, as we were taking that wheel off, this left-hand slider just literally came all the way down to the bottom, so I went ahead and removed the fork sill cap, and just discovering why that would fall all the way down, and discovered that the bottom end of the dampener has been broken. No big deal. Once again, we have a pile of parts that we can pull from, get that piece right, get it in the bottom of the fork tube, get it back up on there, get this thing on the road. But before we do that, let's take those wheels out, give them a good washing and scrubbing, and get them over to the ride factory. Here we are at the ride factory with my good friend Joe. Is this the first time you've ever touched a sprung pub?
Yeah, actually.
First time. First time. Super crazy engineering. We're going to talk about it a little bit more once we get back home. I'll show you guys some blueprints and things of how the suspension is built onto the inside of the hub. But I figured come up here to the ride factory. Got good friends like Joe and Shelby going to help me out because I don't want to mess up those Acron rims. You know, a little expensive, aren't they there, Joe?
Yeah, that way it can be my fault if something bad happens.
we can blame him. Nah.
Everybody else does. I mean, it's convenient.
He's going to do great. It's always nice to have a tire machine to be able to knock out these old rims like that. The question is how is he going to balance it when the axle is off center?
That sounds more like a you problem rather than a me problem.
It is a me problem. I know that you won't be able to do it. So, yeah, we'll talk about that when we get back home. We'll let him get to work, mount these tires up so we can get out of his hair. Super huge thank you to my friend Joe over at the Ride Factory, always hooking us up, getting us squared away. But before we continue on with this video, I just wanted to take a second and talk to you guys about this rear wheel. What makes it so special and different as compared to all other wheels? Well, this Triumph frame is a factory rigid frame, which means that there is no rear suspension in it. So in 1938, Mr. Turner, Edward Turner that is, the man who invented the parallel twin Triumph motor, came up with this design in 1938. And essentially what it is a wheel that has suspension built into the center of the hub. Now we're showing a couple of flash up pictures of ads and drawings and blueprints of that. But inside of this are some springs that allow that axle to travel up and down while the wheel rotates around. Super crazy design, super awesome, gave that extra little bit of suspension that you didn't have before, and it only covered about maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches of travel, but on a rigid frame that gives you a little bit much to go for. So, designed in 1938, did not come out onto a motorcycle until 1946, and that was only on limited edition race motorcycles, and then went into production in 1947, carried on the rigid Triumph frames as an option until 1953. So just a few years that they carried these, They do weigh a lot. I think 17.5 pounds just for that hub. But super cool to have some suspension in the back of our motorcycle. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and remove the internals of this. We're gonna check those bearings, make sure that they're packed good, check the spring pack inside of there, and we can get this wheel back together, get it on the frame, and then move back to the front of this motorcycle and get that squared away. So let's get to work. Inside of this is where all the magic happens. There's actually a spring set on the top and on the bottom, which you've seen in some of those other photos. And you see how the axle is not in the center? Actually, it's about 1.5 inches, and that allows you to have the travel as those springs goes up and down. Now, this is actually the very first motorcycle part that ever had a warning label cast into it. Right here along the side, it says, warning, disassemble only with special rig. Now, I've already checked this packet out to make sure that the springs and everything are good inside of there. Sorry I didn't get the footage for you guys, but it's not that interesting. Literally, you just open up these two halves and then it shows, you know, the springs inside there. But everything's good, repacked, ready to reassemble. We got to grease up those bearings, we got to grease up these axles, and we can get this thing back together, get it onto the Judge, and get this bike going. Let's make it happen. Just like that, one rebuilt sprung hub rear wheel on the Judge. Looks great, ready to move on to the front. But before we get up there, we have to do the same thing. We have to repack the bearings and the wheel and yada yada yada. But I noticed, you know, that little issue that we talked about earlier where it's broke off down there. Well, dug through my parts and turns out I don't have one of those, so we're gonna have to order one up online. Fingers crossed we can find one that can get here on time to be able to get the Judge back together. So I think that is a great stopping point for today's video. It's been a blast. It's been a fun time hanging out with you guys, showing you the process of these old Triumph wheels. With that, we're gonna wrap it up. If you are new around here, jump down and hit that subscribe button. If you really like the video, hit that thumbs up, turn those notifications on, and let everyone know what's going on right here at Weems Motor Co. Peace.